Welcome to a new video in my home automation series. And back in 2021, so about 3 years ago, I made this video on how to use the scripting in Shelly. So if you are aware, from the Gen 2 devices, so from the Pro line of Shelly products, now we already have Gen 3 and I think the Gen 4 devices are coming out as well. There is a new functionality added to the Shelly devices that you can create a script within the Shelly, and so you can extend the functionality. You can do things which the let's say the stock firmware doesn't allow. You can communicate between Shelly devices, which you can do with actions, but you can actually do some programming in a JavaScript-like language. And I thought it's quite interesting. You can do you can do small things here and there, and I mean that video is, 40,000 views. That's fairly popular in my channel. And in the last couple of weeks, I've received, well, months, I think, I received a couple of requests if I can help somebody out with some Shelly scripting. And I said, well, I haven't really done much of it in the last couple of years, because I started playing around with it and I thought it was, it was nice. It was interesting, but I didn't end up using it. So I haven't, used it for anything. But then I said, okay, let's look at it and let's see what we can do with it. And, if I can refresh my memory and, maybe do the functionality that they need. So I just want to cover these two scenarios, especially because I couldn't really, fully create a script that would address the requirements in either of these cases. So if you are watching this and if you know Shelly scripting, you might be able to chip in here. You might be able to help me out how I could have done it differently, or maybe have a different idea how to do it. I posted both of these questions once I got a bit stuck on the Shelly English support page as well. And again, I got a couple of responses, but for the other I didn't get any. So I think again the number of people using Shelly scripting is probably also quite limited. So if this bumps into any of you who know a little bit about the Shelly scripting, maybe you can help me out, and you can also help out the guys who wanted a little bit of assistance. So let me talk you through these two examples, and yeah, I'm going to tell you how much I managed to do in in my trials. So for these exercises, I'm going to use this Shelly Pro 1 PM. Is this short? Not Pro, plus 1 PM. I said Pro incorrectly before, because the Plus series was the first one which had this scripting. So this was the first Gen 2 devices, and I said that there are Gen 3 devices with a slightly more functionality around. Unfortunately, I really lost the communication with Shelly. The marketing girls that I was usually had an email conversation with, and she usually offered me some new product. She left, and I don't know, the communication just stopped, and I don't get any new Shelly devices. So this is sort of the latest one I had. So I'm playing around with these. So might be there's some new stuff which is available in Gen 3, but I never managed to test it because I don't have the device. So let's look at the first one. Actually, let me change screens and also resize so you can see the whole screen. So the first example, or the first request, was there was a guy who had a Shelly. I think he had the Gen 3, and it was connected to a sump pump, and he connected the input to the float switch of the sump pump, and then he just wanted to see how many times the pump turned on during a day. So just to get a rough estimate how much water was accumulated in the sump pump. So I thought, well, this is going to be easy, and actually this is something that I managed to do, and it's this one. So this script, which is I just call the input counter. And if I start, then you can see that, to be honest, it was fairly easy to do, because I created an event callback. So you can see that Shelly add event handler. So I create an event callback with the user data. So the user data gives me all the data, what the event is actually. And in this event callback function, I print the user data. So this is just debugging for me to see, what is the event. And particularly in this example, I was looking for the user data.info.event, and I was checking whether that's the button down. So that's when somebody pushes the button on the Shelly. So it's in my case, that is the button which is connected to the input switch. So, and if somebody does that, then it's just going to increase the counter, and then it's going to print the event counter. And that's it. So actually this is a fairly easy thing to do. And if I start the script now, and if we look at the console, now I'm pushing the button. So now you can see that an input has been created, and you can see that, where is it? Input name, input. Yeah, it's button down. So this is where I press the button, and you can see the event counter is 1, and then button up is when the button was released. And there is even one more event which is called, which is sent out which is a single push, that it was a single press of the button. So it actually works, and it keeps the counter on. And of course, if you would power cycle the Shelly, then this counter would reset. And that was good. It's counting the number of things. And this is where I got a little bit stuck, because it is all nice and good to see all these values here in the console. And of course, you need an input, because if you leave this screen, let's say if I refresh this screen and if I come here, I don't think it keeps the console is clear. So the console is only active as long as you are actively looking at it and debugging. And I think you can just issue a command, so print counter, so it's going to tell you what the current value is. So you can do it like, if it's a manual activity, you come here at the end of the day, or like once a week, you come to the console, you do print counter, and then it's going to tell you how many times it has counted the input. So you can put it into an Excel. Maybe you can do a little bit of Excel magic to extract the previous one, so you can get daily values. But I think, I actually haven't checked this, but I think you can zero the counter as well. So if I do this now, yeah, you can zero the counter. So you can do it at the end of the day. So it's going to count how many times the sump pump has turned on and off a single day. So I think it was a half successful story. And then actually I was thinking, is there any other way to get this information out from this device? And again, consider this, that this is a scenario where the guy has a Shelly. He doesn't have a server, there is no MQTT, there is no Node-RED, there is nothing like that. And this is where I got a little bit stuck, because I couldn't really figure out any way how to present this information. Like, obviously on the main screen, you don't have anything. You can't create something on the user screen, so it shows the information, any of the values. So I couldn't really figure. Also in the app, you have something like you can customize the cards, but there was nothing really in it that would allow you to display this value. Because then I could have created another script which, let's say, runs every midnight and resets the value. So whenever you look at it, it's going to show you the today's value. Or maybe I can save the I have two values, like a counter and a counter yesterday, so I can keep what the maximum value was yesterday. So I could do a little bit like that, if that would be a good way to show it in the app. So you can just open up your app, and then on the main screen it's going to show you, you have the on-off switch, and there is going to be a value or a graph or something like that. So it's not really possible. But then for this particular issue, on the Facebook group, somebody said that the Gen 3 devices has something like a virtual values or virtual variables, and that might be something like this. So that would be interesting to revisit if I would have a Gen 3 device. But yeah, this counter works, and and of course you would enable to run it on startup, and it was nice. So that was the last response. As I said, I couldn't really figure out any other way. I mean, if I would have a server and something, I could whenever a counter is struck, I could post it into, MQTT into a topic. But I think that was good enough for, let's say, a first try. And actually talking about the Facebook post, so that's the Facebook post that I had on this particular counter thing. And then somebody said that if you do a /status topic on the Shelly, then if you look at the JSON, actually under input /0/event counter, the Shelly internally counts the number of events. But again, that works for a Shelly 1 device, like a Gen 1 device, because it has this /status topic. From Gen 2 devices onwards, they use this new RPC protocol, so you don't have access to like a simple HTTP request and the response anymore. So that, again, an interesting thing what you can also do. And as you can see, that's the response from a guy who actually works at Shelly or Alterco, and he said, you see the Gen 3 variant use a virtual component to store the number. Then if you put it into a virtual group device, it will show up in the app. So that would be interesting to test out at some point. And you can also create a webhook and the schedules for it. So yeah, this sounds really interesting. So maybe I get to test it at some point in the future. So the second request was also quite interesting because so completely different guy, and he said that he has again a Shelly, I don't remember the exact make or model, but he wants it that if somebody pushes the button, then it only turns the output on in specific times of the day. And to be honest, I don't think you can do it within the app itself. So immediately I thought, I can do it in a script. So I created this time-dependent relay, which, again, very similar to the previous one. So I create an event callback, which is called event callback, and it passes the user data. And again, we have the event callback, and again, I print the user data. You can comment this out so you don't have so much stuff in the log. And then I again checked if the user data is about a button done. So again, when I'm pushing down on the input button, and then then I make another call. So I make a Shelly call to get this component status sys. So this gives me a lot of information of the device, like free memory and that sort of stuff, but it also gives me the time. So now I can create a new time variable, which is, so the return of this get component status, I put it into a system status variable, and I can create a new JavaScript date where the initial value is the sys, so this sys status dot Unix time times 1000. So here the Unix time only shows, seconds since 1st of January 1970, and JavaScript stores the timestamp in milliseconds, so times 1000. And I can just use the JavaScript function get hours to get the hours from this current date. And I say if the hours is between 10 and 18, then we are inside the time window, and I can call a Shelly call to toggle the switch. So switch toggle ID 0, that's the first output. And again, for this to make it happen, you have to select the output settings to detach. So the input button does not immediately control the output, but here, when I press the input button, the Shelly script runs, and then the script controls the output. So going back to the script, now it toggles, and if it's outside, then it just says outside time window, and it doesn't do anything. So let me just print out this thing so we get less messages on the console, and clear console. So if I press the button now, and then it says inside time window, and I don't know if you know, well, maybe you could hear that the relay was clicking. Yeah, so if I go back to the main screen and I push the button, you see that the input toggles. Oh, it's good. And if you go back to the script, and if I change this to, let's say, 12, oops, So between 12 and 10 and 12 o'clock. Scroll down, clear console. I push the button again, and it just says outside time window, and the output does not change. So, you know, success. That's what he wanted. I thought that's what he wanted, because I wasn't really paying attention to the original email, because he said that few users have access to this device, and he wants to make sure that when they are operating the switch, it only switches when you know, within a certain time window. But I haven't really realized that, of course, when you are talking about multiple users, they are not going to use the physical button, but they are going to use the application, and they have this you know, button here. And unfortunately, this button controls the relay directly. So it's not going to trigger the script, because the script is triggered on the input, but you are not, you know, you are not manipulating the input in the app. You are driving the output directly. So you can't really do that. Well, at least I haven't really found a way how to do it. And again, I asked this very specific question in the Facebook group as well. I think it was this one. Yep. And, you know, silence. There was no response, nothing. So that's probably something that cannot be done. But again, an interesting requirement. And unfortunately, I mean, I was thinking about, you know, using this, because if I untick the, uncomment the user data, and if we go down to the console, and if I, you know, operate it from here, if I go back to the console, well, then you can actually, it's still active. So you can see that actually there is an event where the event is toggle. So the event type is toggle. So this, the Shelly sends an event that the output was toggled, but when this event is released, that's already done. So I cannot, you know, cancel it. I cannot, you know, prevent it from being executed. So all I could really do is, if this is in a time window, I can just toggle it again, so switch it off. But I would just create this, you know, very short burst of, you know, on-off cycle, which is probably not ideal to the relay, to the Shelly, and whatever is connected to it. So yeah, that's where I've given up, because I couldn't really find any other way of doing this. And I tried to go to the app and do the card customization, and you can actually disable this output, so you can hide it from the card. I mean, once you come into this screen in the app as well, this button is always available. But on the card, so the overview card, you can hide the button, but you can never enable the push button, and you cannot create another button which triggers a script. So there is no other way to operate the output other than this built-in button, which, you know, actions it directly. So again, that was a requirement that I thought I could easily do this, but no, it doesn't exactly work the way I imagined. But I was, you know, so happy that I could get the time. I was, you know, the script itself works if you are using the physical button, but in this case, we were not planning to use the physical button. So I'm not really sure with this Gen 3 and the virtual component this could be done. It doesn't feel like it, but yeah, it's an interesting thing. I mean, I couldn't really figure out any other way. I thought maybe I can create a script or a, you know, like a scene or something. But that again, from the scene, I'm driving the output directly, and that's not going to help either. So yeah, I really got stuck with this requirement. I couldn't really, you know, make this work or, you know, fulfill the original request. So unfortunately, we had a couple of emails, and I said that I cannot really figure out anything else, and he must have found another way of, you know, doing it, you know, something similar in a different way. I mean, maybe the only other thing I could have think of is that you have the Shelly i4, or, you know, one of these input devices. So instead of using, so you don't share the the output device to the users, but you only share this other Shelly i4, which has only the inputs. And then that input triggers a script, which then triggers the out, the toggle logic on let's say this Shelly. But I don't know how that looks like in the app and whether it can be done in the app. So yeah, a lot of interesting questions. I mean, definitely this is not what the Shelly was designed for. What they initially thought, what kind of scenarios they want to cover with these products. But it was an interesting experiment. I spent a couple of hours on this. There was a couple of email conversation. Unfortunately, we didn't really get to the bottom of this, but hopefully maybe this is going to be useful for somebody who think about something similar. So that's all I wanted to share. I hope you find it useful. But that will be all for today. Thanks for watching, and hopefully see you in the next one.